me ask you something, and I want you to really sit with this question. You did everything right. You were consistent. You showed up. You texted back. You made time for her when she needed it. You were the one who actually cared. And yet, she chose him. The guy who barely tried. The guy who kept her guessing. The guy who, from the outside, looked like the wrong choice in every possible way. And here you are, replaying conversations, searching for the mistake, asking yourself, what did he have that I didn't? I'm going to tell you exactly what happened, not to make you feel worse, but because the answer, once you truly understand it, will change every relationship you have from this moment forward. She didn't choose him because he was better than you. She chose him because of how he made her feel about herself. And there is a massive difference between those two things. Stay with me, because by the time we get to the end of this, you'll see the whole picture. Here's the painful reality that most men never face. You were operating on a set of beliefs that felt completely logical. Be kind. Be available. Show her you care. Prove your value. Put in the effort. In any other area of life, work, friendship, building something, that formula works. You give more, you get more back. But attraction doesn't follow that logic. And that's not a flaw in the system. It's just how human psychology actually works. Women are not attracted to effort alone. They're attracted to something much harder to define and much harder to fake. And the man she chose? He had it. Not because he was cruel, not because he was playing games, but because of something running underneath his behavior, something she felt before she could ever explain it. Most men spend years confused by this. They think it's about looks, or money, or status. And while those things matter on the surface, they are not the reason she chose him over you. The real reasons go much deeper. And today, I'm going to walk you through every single one of them. Number 1, she was never choosing between two men. She was choosing between two feelings. This is the first thing you need to understand, and it reframes everything. When a woman is deciding between two people, even if she's not consciously doing it, she is not making a pros and cons list. She is not sitting down and thinking, he texts faster, he makes more money, he has better values. That is not how her mind works in matters of the heart. What she is doing is comparing feelings. How do I feel when I'm around him? Do I feel seen? Do I feel alive? Do I feel like the most interesting version of myself? Or do I feel comfortable, safe, and a little bit bored? Here's where most good men lose. Comfort is not the same as attraction. Safety is not the same as desire. You made her feel secure. You made her feel cared for. And those things are genuinely valuable. But if the only feeling you triggered was comfort, you built a friendship, not a fire. He triggered something else, maybe uncertainty, maybe excitement, maybe the feeling that she had to earn his attention instead of just receiving it automatically. And that feeling, however irrational it seems, is what pulled her toward him. This is not about being mean to women or saying their choices don't make sense. It's about understanding that emotion drives human decisions, always. And if you want to be chosen, you have to understand which emotions create attraction and which ones quietly kill it. And that brings us directly to number 2, because this one is where most men unknowingly destroy their own chances. Number 2, you gave her everything before she had to want it. Think about this carefully. When you were there every single time she needed something, emotionally, physically, practically, what did you accidentally communicate? You communicated that your attention, your time, your care had no real cost. It was always available. It was always guaranteed. And here's the brutal psychology behind that. Human beings do not deeply value what costs them nothing. It is not a character flaw, it is wiring. The same reason people treat free things carelessly and handle expensive things with care, the same reason a hard-won achievement feels more meaningful than something handed to you. Value is tied to effort. Value is tied to scarcity. And when you made yourself completely available, completely predictable, you removed both of those things. He, on the other hand, had a life. He had priorities. His attention came and went, and every time it came back, she felt a small rush. Not because he was better, but because she was never quite sure she had him, and that uncertainty, as uncomfortable as it sounds, kept her emotionally invested. You might be thinking, that sounds manipulative, and I understand why it feels that way. But here is the distinction. There's a difference between playing games and simply having a life that is bigger than any one person. Men who naturally create attraction are not usually doing it on purpose. They are just genuinely invested in their own goals, their own growth, their own standards. And that investment in themselves is what makes their attention feel valuable. When a woman has to work a little to get your focus, not because you're being cruel, but because you're genuinely busy becoming something, she respects you differently. She wants you differently. Stay with me, because number 3 gets into something most people never talk about. Number 3, she sensed your need for her approval, and it changed everything. This one is subtle, and it might sting, but it is one of the most important things you will ever understand about attraction. At some point, whether you realized it or not, she could feel that her opinion of you mattered more to you than your own opinion of yourself. She could feel that her smile, her response, her validation was something you were quietly waiting for. And the moment a woman senses that, something shifts in her. It is not that she becomes mean, it is that she becomes uncertain. Because on some deep level, a woman's instinct are asking one question about every man she encounters. Is this a man I can lean on, or a man who needs to lean on me? When she sensed you needed her approval to feel good about yourself, the answer to that question started to feel like the second option. And that changes the entire dynamic, slowly, quietly, without either of you fully understanding why. He didn't need her validation. You could feel it when you watched them together. He had an opinion and kept it. He made decisions without checking her face first. He was the same person whether she was impressed or not. And that consistency, that groundedness, told her nervous system something powerful. This man is stable. This man knows who he is. If you want to genuinely carry yourself differently, not as a performance, but as a real internal shift, ask yourself this: am I doing things to impress her, or am I doing things because they reflect who I actually am? One of those builds attraction, the other quietly erodes it. And if you're finding value in what we're going through right now, if these truths are landing in a real way, take a second and subscribe to this channel, because this is the kind of conversation that most platforms shy away from. And there is a lot more where this came from. Now let's keep going, because what comes next is where the real pattern becomes clear. Number 4, she read your energy long before she made her decision. Here is something that gets overlooked almost completely in conversations about attraction. Women are extraordinarily good at reading energy, not in a mystical way, in a deeply practical, highly evolved way. Long before a woman can explain why she feels a certain way about a man, her body has already processed hundreds of small signals. The way he holds his posture, the tone in his voice, whether he laughs at his own jokes nervously or settles into silence comfortably, whether he shrinks when she challenges him or stays grounded. These signals add up. They create what most people describe as a vibe, and that vibe communicates something that words never could. This man knows who he is. And what was your energy communicating? I'm not asking this to judge you. I'm asking because most men, when they like someone, unconsciously shift into a mode of performance. They become slightly more careful, slightly more eager, slightly less themselves. And she felt that shift. It might have even seemed sweet at first, but over time, performed behavior feels hollow, because it is hollow. It is not you. It is you trying to be what you think she wants. He showed up the same every time. A little indifferent maybe, a little hard to fully read, and that consistency told her, what you see is what you get. There is no performance here. And that kind of authenticity is magnetic in a way that nothing manufactured ever could be. The fix is not to become cold or distant. The fix is to stop performing and start simply being. Be the version of yourself that exists when nobody is watching. Bring that person into the room, because that person, your real self, unfiltered and unauditioned, is the most attractive thing you have. Number 5, he triggered her attachment patterns. You triggered her comfort zone. This is where psychology goes deep, and it is not comfortable, but it is true. Most of us carry patterns from early in our lives, learn templates for what love is supposed to feel like. And for a large number of people, love learned early was not simple or straightforward. It came with uncertainty, with someone who was sometimes warm and sometimes distant, someone you had to work to reach, someone who kept you emotionally on your toes. This is what psychologists call an anxious attachment pattern, and it is more common than most people realize. A woman with this pattern, even without knowing it, is drawn to the emotional texture of uncertainty, not because she enjoys suffering, but because that texture feels familiar. It feels like love is supposed to feel. You felt safe, predictable, consistently kind. And to her nervous system, that pattern, as healthy as it objectively was, felt unfamiliar. It felt like something was missing, not because you were lacking anything real, but because her internal template for love had never included that kind of steadiness before. He gave her the emotional push and pull she was wired to recognize as passion, and she followed it, not because she made a cold, calculated decision, but because her body said, this feels like something I know. Understanding this does not mean you should manufacture chaos in your relationships. It means you should be discerning about who you pursue. A woman who is still caught in old patterns may not be ready for what you genuinely have to offer, and that is not your failure. That is simply information. The right woman, the one who has done some of her own inner work, will recognize your consistency as strength, not boredom. And that brings us to number 6, because this is where most men realize the story was written long before the ending. Number 6, the story she told herself about you was set early, and you let it form without challenge. Women decide quickly how they categorize a man, not because they are shallow, but because human beings are pattern recognition machines. We make sense of people quickly to conserve mental energy, and the story she formed about you in the early weeks became the lens through which she saw everything you did afterward. If that story was, he is sweet, he is dependable, he is always there, then every kind thing you did after that simply confirmed the story. It did not excite her. It did not surprise her. It fit neatly into the box she had already put you in. He, on the other hand, kept breaking her expectations. She would think she had him figured out, and then he would do or say something unexpected. He was unpredictable, not in a chaotic way, but in a way that kept her story about him permanently unfinished. And unfinished stories are impossible to put down. Think about the last show you watched until 2 a.m. What kept you going was not resolution. It was the absence of it. The question that didn't yet have an answer. The loop that stayed open. He was an open loop in her mind. You were a closed one. And closed stories, no matter how beautiful, do not demand attention the way open ones do. This doesn't mean you need to be mysterious for the sake of it. It means you need to keep growing, keep evolving, keep having dimensions that she hasn't fully explored yet. The most consistently attractive men are not the ones who are hard to reach. They are the ones who are genuinely deep enough that there's always more to discover. Number 7, you were trying to win something that was never a competition. The moment you started seeing this as a situation where you needed to prove yourself, do more, say more, be more, you had already shifted into the wrong frame entirely. Because attraction is not a performance review. It is not a job application. It is not something you earn through accumulated effort. You cannot logic your way into someone's heart. You cannot out-effort your way into desire. The men who are consistently chosen are not the ones who tried hardest. They are the ones who simply remained themselves and let the connection either develop or not, without making their peace of mind dependent on the outcome. Here's what trying too hard actually communicates, beneath all the good intentions. I am not sure I am enough on my own, so I am compensating. And she felt that. Not because she was reading your mind, but because effort that comes from insecurity has a different texture than effort that comes from genuine care. One feels like pressure, the other feels like warmth. When you remove the need to win, when you release the outcome, something interesting happens to your energy. You become lighter, more yourself, less rehearsed. And that version of you, the one that isn't trying, is genuinely more attractive than all the effort you were pouring in. Number 8, his standards told her something yours didn't. A man's standards reveal something fundamental about how he sees himself. When a man has clear standards, things he will not accept, ways he will not be treated, lines he will not cross, it communicates something without a single word being spoken. It says, I know my worth. I have thought about what I want. I am not so desperate for connection that I will accept anything offered to me. Did you have those standards? Or were you so focused on keeping her that you quietly abandoned them, one small compromise at a time? A joke that landed wrong and you laughed it off. A plan canceled last minute and you said it was fine. A comment that stung a little and you swallowed it because you didn't want to create tension. Each one of those moments, individually, seems harmless. But together, they painted a picture. And the picture said, his needs are negotiable. His limits are soft. He will adjust himself to keep the peace. He did not do that. Not dramatically, not in a confrontational way. He simply had a quiet sense of what he would and would not accept. And when something crossed that line, she felt the shift in him. Not anger, not a lecture, just a cool, calm recalibration. And that quiet confidence in his own standards is one of the most powerful things a man can project, because it tells a woman, if he chooses me, it is a real choice, a genuine selection made by someone who could have said no. And being genuinely selected by a man with standards, that means something. Number 9, she needed to feel like she was choosing freely. You made it feel like she owed you. This one is delicate, but it matters deeply. When a person feels pressure, even subtle, well-intentioned pressure, their instinct is to pull back. Not because the thing being offered is bad, but because autonomy is one of the deepest human needs. We need to feel like our choices belong to us. Every time you were too available, too eager, too present, you created a subtle weight, not intentionally, but she could feel it. The unspoken expectation behind your actions. The sense that your happiness was quietly resting on her response. And that weight made the space between you feel heavy instead of light. He gave her room. Whether he intended to or not, his life pulled his attention elsewhere frequently enough that she never felt the pressure of his need. And in that space, that lightness, her own feelings had room to grow naturally, without obligation, without the quiet guilt of someone else's hope pinned on her. Real attraction grows in open space. It does not grow under the weight of someone else's expectations. The men who understand this stop trying to close the gap with more effort. They create space. They let her come toward them, or not. And they are genuinely at peace with either outcome. Number 10. And finally, you were looking for the right person. He was being the right person. This is the deepest truth of all 10, and the one that will stay with you longest. You were focused outward, on her, on what she thought, on whether she was responding the way you hoped. Your energy was pointed at her, and she could feel the weight of it. Every conversation had an undercurrent of wanting something from her, even if what you wanted was just her attention, her affection, her choice. He was focused inward, on himself, on his goals, on the person he was in the process of becoming. His energy did not radiate toward her. It radiated outward from a center that had nothing to do with whether she showed up or not. He was not waiting on her to complete something in him. He was already in motion. And that difference, that fundamental difference in where the energy was pointed, is what she felt every time she was around both of you. With you, she felt like the destination. With him, she felt like someone who had been invited along on a journey that was already happening. People are drawn to direction, to momentum, to someone who is going somewhere and living fully in the process of getting there. You don't have to be famous. You don't have to have everything figured out. You just have to be genuinely invested in your own life, your own growth, your own purpose, your own forward motion. Because the most magnetic version of you is not the version trying to be chosen. It is the version so absorbed in who he is becoming that being chosen becomes a natural result of that becoming. Here's the truth that ties all of this together, and I want you to really hear it. You didn't lose her because you weren't good enough. You lost her because you stopped being yourself in the process of trying to keep her. The man she first noticed, whoever he was, however certain or uncertain, had something real, something that was genuinely his. And somewhere along the way, in trying to become what you thought you wanted, you let that person slowly fade out of the room. And here's the part that quietly breaks something in me. She might have actually chosen you, the real you, not the version that was performing, overgiving, waiting on her approval, the version that had edges, that had direction, that had a quiet certainty about who he was. You will never know if that version would have been enough for her, because that version was not fully present. But here's what I know about what comes next. The real version of you, the one who doesn't shrink to be chosen, the one who brings his whole self into the room and lets people decide if they're in or out, that man has not disappeared. He was just buried under too much wanting. The work ahead is not about becoming someone new. It is about returning to who you already are. She chose him, and now you understand why. Not because he was better, but because of what his presence communicated, and what yours, without you even realizing it, quietly gave away over time. The answer was never really about him. It was always about you, about knowing your worth without needing it confirmed, about having a life full enough and a direction clear enough that your attention becomes the thing worth earning, not the thing you offer, freely hoping someone will finally value it. This is not the end of your story. This is the part right before everything shifts. If any of these 10 truths landed for you today, if you recognize yourself somewhere in what we talked about, drop a comment below. Tell me which one hit you the hardest. Number 1, number 5, number 10? Because I promise you, someone else is reading your words right now and realizing they are not alone in this. Subscribe to this channel if you want to keep building this kind of self-awareness. Like this video if it gave you something real. Share it with someone who needs to hear it today, because the man who understands these truths doesn't just improve his relationships, he changes the entire way he moves through the world. And that man, that version of you, nobody will ever overlook again.